All right, so what we're going to talk through now is we're going to talk through what classes can help us do when they are contained within style sheets. So we're actually going to start a new document here. So if you want to do File, New, and then File, Save As, I'm going to go into my, let's go into my HTML files here. If I go into Unit 7, I'm going to start something called In-Class Projects. And if I do just a file in here called, not a folder there, I just want a file. I'm going to call it classes.html for now. So I'm just going to model how classes work by creating a basic HTML file. So here I've created that file, and then I'm going to add in all of that general typing at the top. So I have my doc type tag. I then have my HTML, my closing HTML, my header, my title, which is just going to be classes in action, close off my header, and then I have my body tags. There we go. So we're just going to start off with that very, very basic file, and then we're going to use this to help us model classes in CSS in action. So working with classes, what classes allow us to do is they allow us to be even more specific. So this says specific HTML elements defined in a style sheet as a special formatting category. So currently we have paragraphs, we have H1 tags, we have link tags, we have table tags, but there are instances where we just want certain paragraphs to have a certain styling, or we want a couple of key elements to have maybe red text instead of black text or whatever it might be. So what we're going to do is we're going to use classes to basically create special categories. So we'll say anything with a class name of blank gets this additional styling or gets this type of styling. So what it really does is it gives us as programmers more control over the styles that we can use in our web page. So beyond just being specific about tags, we can now be even more specific and say any tag or a particular tag with this class name will get this particular styling. So they really do allow us to really, really easily select and format certain elements different than other elements. So we could say these paragraphs are red and these paragraphs are green by creating two different classes. It's also more flexible than using inline style sheets, as you can easily repeat the style more than once. So yes, we can use an inline style sheet to code a particular tag in a particular way, but what creating classes does is it allows us to use a particular style multiple times. So if we know that we're going to have text be read multiple times, instead of including that within every single tag, we just give those tags a particular name and style that class name to be read. So as I said, an example is you have a paragraph tag, and suppose you have some paragraphs that you want to be larger with red text, some smaller with green italicized text, and some smaller with blue all caps text. We can actually style by using classes instead of just using inline style sheets. So we could use an inline style sheet, or we could define a class for each. And that's kind of what we're going to move forward and do here. So there are really two steps in writing classes. Just like there were two steps with writing other things like image maps in this particular class, there are two steps to writing classes. The first is to write what's called the class definition. And the class definition actually defines the styles that are going to be used within a particular class. So this class is going to have this size text and this color text or whatever it might be. The first thing is you have to define the styling for that particular class. And the second piece is that you need to actually use the class within the HTML tags so that your browser knows where to apply that particular styling. So the class definition, as I kind of mentioned before, will define the styles that will be applied to that particular tag, but it also identifies the name of the class. So you do have to name a class if you want to create a different styling class. You have to name it and then give it that particular styling. So this will all be placed within the style tags of an embedded style sheet, or it will just be placed in an external style sheet. So these will not be used with an inline style sheet. They will just be used with embedded or external. So here I'm going to actually add that to the very, very top. I have my style tag, and I know I'm going to have type equals text-css. Remember, this is an embedded style sheet, so I need to have the style tags in here. And then we need to add those comment tags as well for an embedded style sheet. And then from there, we can actually type our code inside. So just a note that this will only be used with embedded or external. Again, it will not be used with inline, because you wouldn't create a class when an inline style sheet would only style one tag. So embedded and external, since they can style multiple types of tags at the same time, we'll be using classes within those. So the syntax for it, it says if you want the same look to be applied to different tags, you'll use just dot the class name and then put your style definitions in there. So this dot method is kind of how we really define classes. So if you just have dot and then here it says special, what that line of code does right there is it creates a class called special, and then all of the stylings that occur in between can be applied to any tag. So because there's nothing before the dot, that tells us that if something has the name special, it gets the stylings that fall within these brackets. So you use this type of class name if you have maybe an H1 tag, an anchor tag, and a paragraph tag that you want to have a specific styling, and so you're going to give them this name. Now, what happens differently is if you have a tag that's associated with that class name. So for example, if I wanted all paragraphs or all H1 tags or all whatever to be styled when it has this particular name and the tag, then I would use this method. So remember, dot special can style multiple different types of tags, where the H1 dot special could only style H1 tags with the name of special. So this line right here is providing some very key information for the browser. It's saying tag name, so they have to have the tag dot this class name. So to get this styling that occurs between those brackets, it needs this particular tag and this class name. However, if there's no H1, then this says if a tag has this name, any tag, it can receive this type of styling. So noting that very, very slight differences in the syntax that will actually be very specific to the browser about which types of tags with that particular class name can receive that styling. So you can see here we have the same kind of, we've kind of summarized this already. We have the tag dot class name, or we'll have just the dot class name, and we'll go from there. So we can see how the dot communicates to us what happens before the dot, and then the dot says tag name dot class name, and then it says just the class name if we don't actually need to style just that particular type of tag. So using the class, after we've actually created the class, so that's great that we created it up in our style sheets, we have to actually use the class and mark which particular tags need this particular styling. So we use what's called the class attribute within a tag, and then we give it the value of the name of the class. So for example, down here, if I had my paragraph tag, I don't have any text in there yet, but I'll add some later. If I wanted it to have a particular class name, I would do class equals, and inside of these quotations, I would put the class name. So if I wanted it to have the class name of special, it would then have a class name of special, and the special stylings would be applied for that particular class. So that's how you actually use it and mark which tags receive that particular styling. So we can now know in general how to actually create the class definition. We now know how to use it, and in the next video we will actually create a style sheet that actually creates a program that will use classes and style from there.